Hello friends, a warm welcome to this session of lecture number 24. We are talking about motivation, and till now we have discussed number of theories along with some definitions and process of motivational cycle. Today we will talk about some another aspects of motivation or another ways to motivate employees through job design. Till now we have discussed about some behavioral aspects or tendencies, psychological tendencies of employees to capture those tendencies and motivate. Today I am going to talk about the process of motivation through job design. There are number of job designs which can be used in any organization according to the situation to motivate employees and find the best fit between the employee and the job. Today I am going to talk about the job characteristics model, that is JCM, developed by Hackman and Oldham in the year 1976, and this is one of the most widely used design in organizations till date in order to motivate employees based on the characteristics of job and not on the behavioral aspects. But yes, when we are talking about job design, some elements or characteristics of the job that motivate employees, we are definitely capturing the behavioral aspects of employees at the same time. So, according to job design, the way the work is structured or constructed, it has a bigger impact on the motivation of employees, because the more the impact is positive and have long impact on an individual employee, the more the employee as an individual is eager, is keen to exert the same amount of effort and knowledge, abilities and skills to complete the task. So, according to job design, this suggests that the way elements of the job are organized can influence employee efforts. The more the employee is finding the best fit in the job based on the design and it is in alignment with the skills and knowledge of the employee, the more the person is eager to exert more effort to complete the task. In order to understand the elements of job, Hackman and Oldham propounded the job characteristics model, which serves as a framework to identify opportunities for changes to those elements. That means, it is not that the task has been assigned to the employees. That task has its certain elements that the employee has to understand, and then only he can perform the job. So, the job characteristics model has a framework to identify the opportunities for changes to those elements. That means, to what extent the elements of the job can be manipulated, altered or changed in order to motivate employees to perform better. So, this is basically a theory of work design or job design, that is the job characteristics model. So, this model is a set of principles implemented for enriching jobs in organizational settings. Now, this setting can be in form of not only related to individual employees' knowledge, skills, abilities. It is more about that in what manner the job has a positive impact on the employee. Now, job means the task that has been assigned. So, what is the value of that task to an individual employee? Is the task very much in alignment with an individual's efforts? Is the task that has been assigned is in alignment with the individual's perception that to what extent he is perceiving his job meaningful? So, these are the elements which enrich the job. Now, from time to time when organizations tend to modify the jobs of an individual, this basically has the purpose to motivate employees. Therefore, the job characteristics model describes jobs in terms of 5 core job dimensions or elements. So, every job has certain elements. This is the job characteristics model, and which are those dimensions? The dimensions are skill variety, task identity, task significance, autonomy and feedback. Now, these are the structural properties of any job. We are not talking about any psychological aspect, but in the first instance based on the JCM, we are talking about the core dimensions, the structural elements of the job in terms of skill variety, task identity, task significance, autonomy and feedback, and how these elements have a major impact on employee motivation in terms of behavior or how they respond to the task they have received, how they perceive the task that they have been assigned to them. So, I will talk about this model maybe little bit later, just to show that this is how this model works. So, it is a pictorial representation. So, let us continue with those elements. The first is skill variety. The degree to which a job requires different activities using specialized skills and talents. That means any job that has been assigned to any employee, to what extent it entails different kind of skills that an individual can perform. It is not only one skill that an individual can align with the job. Number of skills that an individual has, and to what extent he is using those skills to perform that job. For example, a garage owner who is an operator who does number of jobs related to his garage. He can repair any electrical gadget, he can rebuild the engines, he does body work and interacts with customers and scores high on skill variety. So, the point is that any garage operator who has these number of skills in one instance, then definitely he has high sense of skill variety in comparison to a person who is just doing only one job, that is body shop, that is painting the job. From morning to evening he is just performing only one job of just painting the cars. Definitely the person who is just doing one single task will experience more monotonous and decreased level of motivation in comparison to a garage operator who is performing a number of skills at a time in terms of repairing any electrical gadget, rebuilding the engine, or he is doing some body work. So, this is skill variety. Similarly, if we talk about any IT employee who is developing any software, it is not only that he is just testing the software once the software has been developed. Maybe he is into all the details of the software while developing a software, which talks about not only literature, which talks or not only about the logistics, he is also taking care of some different aspects to build that application. The other is task identity. It is a degree to which a job requires the completion of a whole and identifiable piece of work. For example, a cabinet maker, a carpenter, either if he is preparing the whole table in one go, which is his responsibility, will experience an sense of identity that he has prepared a one table on his own, rather than any cabinet maker or another carpenter who is just preparing or just finishing a task of preparing the legs of the table, then maybe his sense of identity will be very low. So, this is task identity. For example, a cabinet maker who designs furniture, selects the wood, builds the furniture and finish the pieces, has a job that scores high on task identity. So, a job scoring low on the dimension is operating a lathe solely to make table legs. So, if we compare in terms of task identity, any person who is completing the job right from start, from first step to the last stage, he will experience more sense of identity in performing the job in comparison to an employee or to the carpenter who is just doing only one task out of that whole piece of product. This is task identity. The other is task significance. It is a degree to which a job affects the lives or work of other people. That means to what extent the job is so significant and important to an employee that it will have a major impact on the other people. This is task significance. The more you know, employee knows that I am performing a very important task which is going to have a major impact on people, maybe outside the work or inside the organization, then this type of element is known as task significance. For example, any nurse who is helping patients in hospitals intensive care unit, she is actually contributing to recover from a disease which has been diagnosed, and she is contributing to enhance or improve the life of the patient. This is the job of a nurse. So, such kind of employees will score high on task significance in comparison to any employee who is doing a menial job which has no contribution to the organization in terms of significance. This is task significance. The other is autonomy. As the term implies, the degree of freedom, the degree of independence and discretion that an individual perceives in performing the job, that is autonomy. Autonomy, freedom, independence in rescheduling his task, determining his own procedures to perform the task, that is autonomy. For example, any sales manager who can tailor his own sales technique to sell the product, that is autonomy. Maybe the organization is just to organization, it just matters that a salesperson should sell maximum number of products in a day, irrespective what is the sales technique the person is following. This is autonomy. So, any sales manager who schedules his own work and tailors his sales approach for each customer without supervision has a highly autonomous job. In comparison to an accountant who is required to follow a standardized set of procedures or standardized script to perform his job, will always experience low autonomy in his job. This is autonomy. So, it is very much dependent on the type of job or type of profession that any individual employee is performing, and that will depend his motivational level. But yes, in this kind of model, that is job characteristics model, the foremost focus is on the elements, core dimensions of job. And the last is feedback. It is a degree to which carrying out work activities generates direct and clear information about your own performance. A job with high feedback is testing and inspecting iPads and installing components of an iPad as they move down an assembly line provides low feedback. Any IT professional who is testing an iPad, because after testing it will be launched in the market, will receive important and significant feedback from the organization in comparison to the assembly line workers who will just manufacture or assemble all the parts of the iPads and bring it to the table. So, in this kind of jobs where the feedback matters a lot in terms of testing, in terms of inspecting, in terms of even designing, to what extent the design is successful enough, that is feedback. So, the more an individual experiences that he is performing an important piece of job where he has to receive or he will receive some significant feedback for his performance, there the motivation level will also go high. So, these are the 5 core elements of job design, that is skill variety, task identity, task significance, autonomy and feedback, which determines the level of motivation of an individual based on the structure or elements of the job. Now, what we have discussed till now is the structural elements of the job, but how it is going to impact the behavior or psychology of an individual employee, that is more important further. So, if I go back to this model, so these core dimensions will lead employees to experience meaningfulness in the work, responsibility for the outcomes of the work and actual results of the work activities. So, when these dimensions are being perceived at work by the employees, that is the job they are doing, it will lead to the critical psychological states in terms of experience meaningfulness of the work, experience responsibility for outcomes of the work and knowledge of the actual results of the activities, and this will lead to some personalized work outcomes. It is an individual perception of an employee about the outcomes. So, what are those outcomes? Now, if skill variety, task identity and significance are being perceived by an individual employee, it will lead to experienced meaningfulness of the work and will lead to high motivation, high work performance, satisfaction with work and low reduced absenteeism and turnover. So, this ultimately leads to employee growth needs strength. The more the employee needs become more robust to find more opportunities for further growth and enhancement in their performances and their career. So, basically this is a positive cycle or virtuous cycle of motivation where the core dimensions of the job or core elements of the job has been focused in order to motivate employees based on their perceptions and experiences. More skill variety, task identity, significance, autonomy and feedback are being experienced. More positive critical psychological states can be experienced in terms of meaningfulness of work, responsibility and for outcomes of the work and knowledge of the actual results of the work activities, and finally leading to enhanced motivation level and increased employee growth need strength. So, let us now move to the further discussion where we will talk about these critical psychological states and personal work outcomes in detail. So, the first 3 dimensions, skill variety, task identity and task significance, combine to create meaningful work. So, if these 3 core dimensions are being perceived by the employee, it will lead to create meaningful work that the employee will view as important, valuable and worthwhile. Jobs with high autonomy give employees a feeling of personal responsibility for results, and feedback shows them how effectively they are performing, which we have already discussed in this figure. Further, This model also proposes that individuals experience critical psychological states when they learn knowledge of results in the model that they personally have performed well, they experience responsibility on a task they care about and which is quite meaningful. So, the more these three states are present, the greater will be personal and work outcomes such as high internal work motivation, high quality work performance, high satisfaction with work and lower absenteeism and turnover. So, figure 1 indicates that individuals with a high growth need strength are more likely to experience critical psychological states when their jobs are enriched and are more likely to respond to them positively. So, it is a virtuous process that from core dimensions to personal work outcomes and which strengthens an individual's growth need desire. So, the more task identity is being perceived, more variety, more significance, autonomy and feedback are being perceived. It is not only about critical psychological states or personal and work outcomes, it actually strengthens an individual's need and desire for growth at work, right. Further, if we are talking about job characteristics model, it does not carries only theoretical significance. It also has some empirical validation that to what extent we can measure an individual's perception about identity, variety, significance, autonomy and feedback, which is based on motivation potential score. So, Oldham and Hackman has provided a single predictive index which is called as a motivation potential score, which measures the presence of core dimensions, core job dimensions and can be computed based on the below formula. That is, motivation potential score can be calculated based on summation of scores on skill variety, task identity and task significance into autonomy and feedback divided by 3. So, this will give a particular score about the core dimensions, and the higher the score, the higher is the perception of those core dimensions. So, the motivation potential score ranges from 1 to 125 and elements that lead to job satisfaction are achievement, advancement, recognition, growth, responsibility and the work itself. So, the higher the score, higher is the perception of or sense of achievement, advancement, recognition, growth, responsibility and the work itself. Just for your awareness, this is a job diagnostic survey, although if we talk about the original job characteristics model, it also carries a 100-item questionnaire to understand the whole model, where there are 100 questionnaires to measure not only core dimensions, but critical psychological states, personal and work outcomes and employee growth needs strength. But generally researchers do follow this job diagnostic survey, which is a 23-item questionnaire, and along with the scoring key it measures dimensions, that is skill variety, task identity, task significance, autonomy and feedback. Apart from that, this is the theoretical significance and empirical significance of job characteristics model. With the more technical advancements, Hackman and Oldham also introduced certain changes as per the changes in the environment, and they suggested that there are 3 areas which are fruitful in development of work design. They are social motivation, job crafting and teams. So, they have actually expanded the role of job characteristics model based on the changing environments in 3 areas. The first is the social sources of motivation. Since more interaction is required and high levels of client employee interactions are required, so it becomes important that social sources should also be considered as a source of motivation for employees. So, due to the changing nature of work, which is characterized by specific changes in work dynamics and structures, more jobs require high levels of client employee interaction and increasing interdependence among employees. It would make sense to investigate the effect of social aspects have on effective and behavioral outcomes. So, all the job core dimensions, variety, identity, significance, autonomy and feedback must also hold the component of social sources which actually motivates employee to perform better based on client interaction, and at the same time to what extent there is a degree of interdependence on the other employees. So, social sources also adds to the core job dimensions of motivation. The other is job crafting. While job characteristics theory was mainly focused on the organization's responsibility for manipulating job characteristics to enrich jobs, there has been a considerable buzz in the literature regarding job crafting. That is, the employees have some control over the role in the organization. Now, this we can say it can be autonomy also, but basically here job crafting means that the person can make some minor changes or some major changes as well in how he has to perform the job. Maybe the protocols will remain the same, the mode of conduct will also remain the same, but maybe the individual employee can have some sense of control, maybe in terms of decision making or leadership, in order to perform the task. So, this is job crafting. And the last is teamwork design. The potential research directions is relevant to teamwork design, which discuss the need to understand when to use work design aimed at the individual or team level. That means the core job dimensions can be altered accordingly, that whether the job that has been assigned has been assigned to an individual employee or to the team. So, team design can be fostered while making some minor changes in the model and then implement so as to motivate employees at individual level or at team level. This will help to increase performance, and what type of model will best suit either to an individual or to the team. So, these are the addition to the core dimensions of job design in terms of three factors, that is social sources, job crafting and team design accordingly. So, more flexibility has been offered, has been induced in the model according to the changing environments or rapidly changing environments, just to meet global competition. Alright, since we are talking about some new ways to motivate employees through jobs, if we are talking about job design, then there is another aspect to motivate employees through job is job redesign. So, what is job redesign? It is a process of rearranging tasks and responsibilities to better align roles with the changing environment inside and outside the organization. So, the components, the job dimensions will remain the same, but maybe the components can be altered according to the role, according to the roles and according to the responsibilities and the individual employee. So, finding the best fit between the employee and the job and the employee will need to reshuffle the components, reshuffle the conduct of the job that has to be performed, that is job redesign. So, this refers to certain activities that involve alteration to specific jobs or systems of the job with the intent of improving both productivity and the quality of employee work experience. So, maybe it can also be about giving some more autonomy to the employees to make some changes in the job, or maybe from the other side, that is from the authorities or management, they are also making some minor changes or alterations in the job components, so that the best fit can be achieved and the job becomes more attractive to the employees. So, job design entails changes to provide employees with additional responsibility for planning, setting up and checking their own work, for making decisions about work methods and procedures. So, it is not only about sales approach, it is about different control in different aspects in different directions, about decision making, about planning, about controlling their own work, and maybe the feedback will come from the other resources, but the way you are controlling your work in order to enhance the performance, that is job redesign, and making decisions about work methods and procedures for establishing their own workspace, for dealing directly with the client who receive the results of the work. So, this is job redesign. In many cases, jobs that previously had been simplified and segmented into many small parts in the interest of organization efficiency can be reassembled and make one larger job to complete, and that job will carry a lot of meaningfulness because it has significance. So, the more small jobs have been reassembled into one whole piece of job which is more meaningful, will entail job redesigning, and at the same time the employee will also perceive some kind of significance in that job, which will motivate him to perform better than in future. So, this is the another aspect of job redesign. So, if job design is one aspect to motivate employees, then as per the changing environments or of the organization or the environment, then job redesign is another aspect to motivate employees. So, how this process takes on? So, this requires some steps in one go, then only we can say that job redesign can be implemented. So, first step is what is being done. It is about job description, that what the job entails, what the task entails. We have to identify the components we have to identify how many people will complete that piece of job and what are the difficulties that any employee will experience or is experiencing in performing the job. So, this is what is being done, the current status of the job, the current elements of the job. The other step is determining skills of the employees, that is determine the level of fit with their current positions. To identify the best fit, currently which employee is performing a particular task and whether the fit is perfect between the two or not. So, we are determining that whether the employee is possessing all the skills required to perform the task in one go in a very perfect manner. The third is reallocate task. Employees have a better fit between their skills, interest and position and required. So, once the skills are being identified that who is performing the job, that means which employee is performing the job with maximum skills, once it is being reviewed, then task is being reallocated based on that which employee has better skills, interest and position and will perceive the job more motivating and satisfying. The next step is provide training as needed. When the job is being redesigned in terms of skills and finding the best fit, maybe any employee would need to undergo some form of training in order to enhance his skills and then perform. So, this is about provide training as needed in order to achieve the maximum goal or to the fullest. This is provide training as needed. And the last is implement the program by providing a new job description to each employee and having them focus on the task in the revised position. Once the job has been redesigned, once the training has been imparted, then it is a stage of job redesign when the employee is on the floor where he has to perform the job with all the preparations and focus on the task in the revised positions. Now, revised position means adding more elements to the job, training the employees to perform a revised job and then reaching the goal. So, these are the steps that are being included in the process of job redesign. The step seems to be easy, but this is a long term process. It is a time taking process because the most difficult task is understanding the description of the job, what the job is all about, who is performing, the person who is performing has how many skills to perform the task effectively and whether he or she is successful in achieving the goal or not. That description will actually lead to redesigning of job and then performing to the fullest. So, this is the objective of job redesign that involves alteration of specific jobs, systems or with the intent of improving both productivity and quality of employee work experience. So, we will talk about job design more in detail in our next discussion. Thank you so much.